topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask Good Questions podcast, broadcasting live every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio at W4CY.com. This week and every week, we will reach for a higher purpose in money and life, as well as a focus on health and wellness. Now, let's join your host, Bonita Bell-Andersen, as together we start with Asking Good Questions.
Hey, welcome to the Ask Good Questions podcast. I am Bonita Bell-Andersen, your host, and I am super excited today. We have another female financial advisor on with me today. Her name is Reshell Smith, CFP, and I will invite her onto the proverbial podcast stage now. Here she comes. Hey, Reshell.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. You're coming at us from Orlando, Florida.
O-Town.
And I already asked her if she goes to Disney all the time, and she says, nah.
I do not.
No.
I do not.
Nah. So anyway, well, I'd like to begin with I'm going to kind of shorten this bio because it's a long one. She is the founder and president of Ames Financial Solutions, which is a virtual financial planning firm where she offers comprehensive financial planning services. She focuses mainly on Gen X and Y, offering tailored strategies for divorcees, C-suite executives, and first-generation wealth builders, which I hope that we have more and more of those out there.
Yes.
Her commitment lies in providing financial planning services that ensures her clients navigate their financial journey with precision and confidence. Now, I'm just going to briefly talk about some of these awards. This girl's got some awards behind her. She's a finance contributor for Orlando's NBC affiliate, WESH2/CW18. She is a two-time Stellar Award winner, WOKB 1680 AM, and she is Investopedia's top 100 financial advisors. She was named to Investopedia's top financial advisors in 2018, 2022, and 2023. So she's also written a book in her spare time. She has authored A Woman's Worth, 7 Key Essentials to Financial Independence. People need to have both of our books, don't they?
Yes.
And that is available on Amazon. She's also the CEO of R.S. Smith Consulting, LLC, which houses She's So Wealthy Academy, She's So Wealthy YouTube channel, and She's So Wealthy podcast. So, my goodness. You are a busy girl, and
Yes.
It's great because the industry needs more and more women just like you.
I agree. Yes, I totally agree. So I am just trying to contribute when and where I can.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all any of us can do, right?
Yes.
So today we're focusing. Now, I went through a terrible, terrible divorce 25 years ago. I didn't have me and I didn't have you 25 years ago. And I had basically characterized myself as being curled up in a corner, sucking my thumb for a while before I finally started clawing my way out of that. I had 3 daughters that were likewise hurting. And so today, because you focus on divorcees, I thought it would be, hopefully we will get out to those people that need this. But so we're going to focus on, that's kind of going to be a big topic. But why did you, what was it that made you decide to think about working with divorcees?
I didn't have me either. So I had me, but I just didn't no, right?
Yeah.
So I am my number one client, right? So when
Yeah.
I talk about different situations that happen, a lot of times I'm talking about myself. And I worked at another firm for 16 years. And I was in their platinum group where you had to have at least $1 million or more. I'm also one of the early team members because they formed a CFP group. And so I'm one of the early people that was a part of that team or that group. And I worked with people who knew they needed a financial plan and people who were, again, kind of at that million mark or more. And so what I saw was that I only work with men. And I thought,
Yeah.
there's
Yep.
something wrong with this picture here, because even when they'd bring in a couple to work on a financial plan, only half of the couple came, right? The
Yeah.
male half, right?
Right.
And so I thought, wow, there have been times where I'd say, well, is your wife going to join us? And she's here. We're at the kitchen table. She's here. She's not really saying much, or she's kind of in the background. And so I always thought, well, men typically pass away before women.
Yeah.
And, if there's a divorce, what does she do? Like, she doesn't know. I had one woman ask me one time if she was able to get a new car. And I'm looking at their net worth and I'm thinking, that, like, what kind of car are you going to buy? Because you
Yeah.
have way
Yeah. Why are
more
you
than
asking
enough,
me? Yeah.
yes, to buy a car. So I just felt like I can be relatable because I've had that experience. Also, I have witnessed other people having that experience. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, many of us have done it wrong.
Yeah.
There is, although divorce isn't a great thing, there is a right way to divorce. There's a good way to divorce.
Yeah. So hopefully we're going to delve into that a little bit today. So
Yes,
you did have a personal experience.
I did.
And I
I
think,
did.
don't you think that we have more empathy when you've gone through something, whatever it is? But I
Yep.
think people are able to relate to you more when they know you've been through it.
Absolutely. And that's, they always talk about being relatable and representation. Not that I want to represent
No,
divorcees,
it's
but,
like, I really wish I didn't have that experience, but
Right, exactly. So I went through it, and much of mine was done in mediation. There wasn't a whole lot of back and forth, but as I look back, I see where there are some things that I could have done better. I could have
yeah,
fought a little harder for. And of course, that's why we have attorneys, but I just see where there's some things that I could have done better. And then I'm looking at other people who have way more to separate or to split up than I did. And
mhm,
so I'm like, everything is negotiable, even if you don't think it's negotiable, for that stay-at-home mom whose husband travels and builds up miles and miles and miles and miles of sky miles. Like, everything's negotiable. And
right,
so I don't think that a lot of times we're thinking of that. And so they need a me and they need a you to help with that.
right. Well, do you think that your perspective has changed over the years? So, Reshell, how long have you been in the industry?
So I am 3 decades in.
Good job. See, I
Yes.
started midlife, so I wouldn't be possible because I've been in this industry for, for 25 years.
Okay.
But I started midlife
Yep. I
after that
was.
divorce, and it was not anything I was expecting to ever do. See, you were one of those kids like 19, 20 years
Yep.
old getting
Yep.
out there, and well, man, what a fabulous contribution that you can make
Yeah.
with that. So back to that question, do you think that your perspective has changed?
Around divorce.
Yeah.
It absolutely has. And before, I tell you, when I got married, and at the time that I got married, I wasn't thinking about prenup. I wasn't thinking about, what happens to the assets and the home and all those things. None of that was on my mind because we were, fairly young. So none of that was on my mind. But now it most certainly is on my mind. And I tell people who, especially if you're talking about that second marriage where everybody has kind of done their own thing. We have children from a prior relationship.
A whole lot.
Absolutely. The perspective is different.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I've been married again for the last 15 years, and my husband lost his first wife to cancer, where I went through, but his was a completely different perspective. One of the things that he confided in me was that he has a hearing disability, and he was mad at her. There, you see these things about how you go through these different stages, and he was mad because he had depended on her a lot. And so then she up and dies. And so now I find that I fill that role in a lot of ways. But I know that because of my divorce too, I've had people, say, well, you need to talk to Bonnie because she's been through it. So people recognize that you will probably be able to be a good person to talk to because of your past experience.
Yeah, and past experience, and also because of the industry that I'm in. So, sometimes you get that attorney and you go into mediation, and they don't know, should we be splitting the traditional IRA or the Roth IRA, or what's even here? What makes this fair?
What do you find that you're working mostly with female divorcees, or do you occasionally have male clients?
It's occasional with the males. It's predominantly females. I just attracts like. I don't know, but it's definitely predominantly females. Occasionally a male, but I mean truly occasional, out of the blue, occasional.
Right. Well, so what kind of services do you provide? Somebody's saying, we're going to get a divorce. What kind of services can you provide to those people that are coming to you for the first time?
So for the people who are coming to me specifically for divorce financial planning, that is really what we're working on. And so it depends on when you come in. Like, where are you in the process? If you are in the beginning stages of the process, that's actually better for me because I get to see, what are all the assets? What are all the liabilities? And we have a better picture going into mediation or going into court, as opposed to if it's after. If it's after, then you just, whatever you have, and we just kind of work on your budget, your cash flow, your net worth, and all those things after everything is divided. One of the things that I'll say, and I know that when I'm on a podcast, people talk about, like, what's that one thing that you would leave a person with? And so I'm going to say that early, in that one of the things that women hold on to is the home. And there is just that attachment there. It's like, this is where my kids are. This is where the friends are. This is where the family is. And a lot of times that's true. But many times I've seen where holding on to that home puts you in a bad situation. If it's underwater, if the mortgage is too high, you have that emotional attachment. Sometimes you have to let the house go. And that has been a big, big mistake for many women.
And in my experience, there was also the thing that hit me in the face was the maintenance and the upkeep.
Yeah.
And he's not here anymore to help with that. And it's like, and then that made me angry.
Of course. Yes, absolutely. Same for me. And at the time that we were going through our divorce, we were in a buyer's market. I mean, it definitely wasn't going to be in our favor. And so it was like, oh, okay, well, I'll just stay here. And at some point, of course, we're going to be above water because we didn't pay a whole lot of money down. But at some point, we're going to be above water. We weren't like way below. But it took a few years for me to even kind of break even or even think
Right.
about selling. And so I knew I was going to be here long term. So for me, it was okay. But that's not everyone's case.
Yeah. Do you find that you're working with people before they're going through this or in the middle, or is it kind of a mix of all three? It just depends, or what do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of a mix, but when I do a lot of my social media marketing and I'm out speaking,
That's
I do talk a lot about before. So I do kind of get some women who are like, hey, we've been kind of thinking about this. I don't know if it's going to happen, or maybe we're separated and we're probably not going to get back together. So we're at that stage
right,
generally.
right, right. Well, what would you say? How do your services differ from like a therapist or an attorney?
I think I am a therapist.
Right, I agree with that. Because do you know what, Reshell? I've actually had people say, "Are you sure you're not a counselor? Are you sure
Yeah.
you're not a therapist?" And I'm like, "Well, I feel like it right now."
Absolutely. You have to have a lot of compassion. You have to have empathy. You have to know how to meet people where they are emotionally and try to tell them not to make emotional decisions. It's a lot that feels very therapeutic. And sometimes even with just regular financial plans, when people know that their finances are in disarray, that first call when they're kind of letting it all out, there's a cry. A lot of times there are tears. There are tears being shed. And so I think you have to have a very, very be intentional about being empathetic.
You're right. Yeah, my feeling around attorneys, and as I think back 25 years ago, I was like, oh, what a train wreck. Because the attorney basically was just gathering information.
Yeah, right,
You
right,
know, it
right,
was just thank you, ma'am, and bye.
right.
And so yeah, so I think that in very that's the thing with women financial advisors is inherently we have more empathy and we have more of a nurturing spirit and all that sort of thing.
Yes, we are very nurturing. And, to answer that question, obviously, you're right. An attorney is really looking at get me the paperwork or get me the documents that I need. Obviously, we're trying to be a mixture of working on finances, but being empathetic and being compassionate.
Right.
Obviously, a therapist is going to have the tools that they need. So we don't have the tools necessarily that a therapist has. So they still do need a therapist, but it does feel like we are part of those therapy sessions.
Yeah, I know that the first therapist I went to, it was a male therapist, and all I wanted to do was throw the garbage can at him.
Oh,
I was just like, and I realized really quickly that what he was offering was not what I needed.
right.
So, but speaking of that, what do you think some of the biggest challenges are that people face emotionally during a divorce?
So probably the worst one is the anger.
Yeah.
Because when you are angry, you can make some really bad decisions.
Yeah.
And you know, anger and depression are very emotional about the divorce, not wanting to do it and really wanting to do it. Those kind of run neck and neck, but man, anger certainly makes you do some really bad things. Like you may do something that can send you to jail,
Yeah.
because you're so angry.
All you want to do is like revenge. Yeah.
Absolutely. You want revenge. You want to take everything. You want to make every topic that
You
comes
want to
up a
make it
hard
hurt.
time. Yes, you want to make them hurt. So anger is probably the worst emotion
Yeah.
during that time.
Yeah. We've never felt that, Reshell.
No,
No.
not at all. No,
No.
we never wanted to.
Yeah, yeah. So how about like logistically or legally, what do you think tends to surprise people? Most people have no idea what they're getting into.
And
Right.
the cost. So first of all,
Yeah.
the cost of a divorce is the shocker for most people. And if you're even in mediation, like, because that's where I was, and I thought, and I don't remember the cost, but I thought, oh boy, we better hurry and get out of this room, because that bill is really racking up, because mediators, they charge what they charge, and they charge per hour. So I think one of the biggest things is the cost. The second thing is the time that it takes to go through a divorce. So some courts are backed up when it comes to family law, and you may see that your divorce gets stretched out for months when you're like, I want to get this thing over with, I want to get it done, but it gets stretched out. So I think that the cost, the time, and when they send those papers and they say, we want to know everything, every bill, every credit card, every account.
That hurts too, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. People, I think that is a surprise for many people.
Yeah. Well, but I have always felt like mediation is less expensive than just going to the attorney, because it's supposed to be, it should be, because if you can somehow work together and make agreements, then with an attorney, you're going to have this major back and forth with sending paperwork, and it can get into a huge mess.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah. With mediation, you're right. If you're on the same page and you can kind of knock some of that out even before you go in, that definitely makes it better. Wasn't my case, but I wasn't in mediation for a long time, but knocking things out in advance, we didn't really do that, but that would be a way to help with that expense.
Yeah. Do you think that there's some misconceptions out there about how divorce really is?
Yeah, I think most of us feel like it's the end, life is over, what am I going to do? And for some people, when they've been with someone for so long, that is their life. That's, what they have known forever. So I get it. But I'm surprised that some people are like, okay, that's it. I'm not dead. We're moving forward. So I think some people have this misconception that like it's a death, it's the end. And in reality, it's the beginning of that next chapter.
I know for me, it was, I was married to my first husband for 25 years.
Oh, wow.
And so it was, and here I am, I'm midlife when this happens. And I very much felt like I needed to reinvent myself.
Mm-hmm.
I had to anew think, what do I want the rest of my life to look like? And so I think people just, when all the initial things that happen, you're not thinking about that, but eventually I think people, depending on where they're at, if they're really in a funk, then it's going to take longer. Don't you think? And also I think people are not going to want to, I think if people are more accepting of what the situation is, they're going to be more willing to work with you.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think part of my job in putting myself out there as a financial planner who works with divorcees, I think they come in feeling like there's a lot that I already know, and there is. But what I try to tell them, and it's not all just about the money. There's a lot more that goes into it than just the money and just the assets, especially when you have kids and life insurance policies and all those things. It's way deeper than just child support.
What do you think the role of communication is and how smoothly it goes?
So in my divorce checklist, one of the things that I talk about is Yes.
That divorce checklist is going to be in my bonus downloads on the podcast website. Will be a whole flyer that is what Reshell has provided, that is this divorce checklist. And so you can go find that at the bonus downloads on the podcast website. Okay. So
Awesome.
no, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. But one of the things that I say is if you can keep open communication, you want to do that. Like you don't want one person to close down. Like if you can keep things open, that is the best situation because once people start closing down, lines are drawn, boundaries are set, and now we're just talking through attorneys and
Yeah.
it's costing us more, it's going to take longer, but if you can keep that communication going and keep the peace, it certainly will help make your final divorce smoother.
Yeah.
The whole
How
process is smoother.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's difficult no matter how you cut it. But how important do you think a support team is around somebody who's going through a divorce?
Where I've seen that show up the most is for people who have children and small
Yeah,
children.
yeah,
So if mom is primarily taking care of the three kids and dad has his own place and he's going to work doing his thing like as he should be, mom still has to get the kids up, get breakfast, get them to school. If there's extracurricular activities, they have to handle all that. And so if you don't have family and friends who can support you during that time, it can get very, very
yeah,
rough. I think you have to have someone. I mean, I guess you can pay to get that type of help if necessary, but where that comes up the most, of course, is when you have those minor kids that need that extra care.
yeah,
And also second to that, it would be for someone who is having a very rough time going through divorce,
yeah,
you definitely need that support. So if you're at the point where you are depressed or maybe you want to harm yourself or you want to harm the other person,
yeah,
your support team is going to be extremely important.
yeah. Do what do you think some of the most common mistakes are that people make when they're going through a divorce?
Well, the one I told you that was sticks out is about the who's going to keep the home and is it
Yeah,
should you keep the home? I think that is like way up there. The second thing is I feel like if you are the one who's not the breadwinner, and not that I'm trying to say that you need to drain the other person dry, but if you're not the breadwinner, you really need to negotiate as much as you can because typically there's no going back, right?
no, no,
So I have women that say, hey, if he pays me $500 a month, that should be good because that'll take care of food or whatever.
yeah,
And so I always say, yeah, it takes care of that now. But remember, you have a child that goes to birthday parties. So you got to get gifts when they go to birthday parties. You have a kid that's very active in basketball. Does that cover the gas and those things? So I think a lot of times when we are the non-breadwinner, we sell ourselves short in what
right,
we ask
right.
for.
And the other thing is, mine was in Washington State, and there was like a 5-year thing that where the non-breadwinning or the lower breadwinning spouse receives a stipend.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought it was ready for when that was going to be ending, but man, when
Oh,
that it's from this date to this date, and then you better be ready when that doesn't is not there anymore.
yeah. Yeah, that is
Ugh,
that is so true.
hard.
And it kind of like, like you say, stipend or alimony, like it once that some alimony is lifelong. And then so here's the thing, when some of those agreements are written up, it's like, hey, you're gonna get this amount, but do remember that if you get married again,
Yeah,
this goes away, and then
right.
you go out there and you fall in love and you get married again, and that money goes away. But then it's like, oh shoot, this isn't gonna work out. So
Yeah.
you kind of mess yourself up
What do you think that there's anything that people do that make it harder
for the
for
divorce
the
process.
yeah, harder than it needs to be?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
is there
yeah,
anything what do you think people do that make it harder than it needs to be?
yeah. So remember we talked about anger.
Yeah.
So remember we talked about anger, and so anger, shutting down communication. those, not planning for the divorce. So that it's going to happen. Like, we're going to mediation today or whatever. Why are you coming in here unprepared?
Yeah.
To me, that just makes it harder. And those three things stand out. I'm sure there are more, but again, kind of going back to that anger thing, when you are angry and you want to fight over every little fork and
Yeah.
spoon, you're just making the situation
It's just
harder.
making it worse.
Yeah.
So would that go along with maybe somebody that is trying to quote unquote win a divorce?
Oh
I think
yeah.
I
Oh
think
yeah.
it's, yeah,
Oh yeah.
nobody's winning in this whole thing, I don't
Oh
think.
yeah. And like, think about, I can't think of one specifically, but when you think about divorce in the movies and how this one is trying to up that person, or like who
Yeah.
gets served first and what state you get served in, those are people who are probably trying to win or get the best outcome for
Right.
themselves. Yeah.
What do you think the stages are that people go through when they're going through a divorce? Like, walk me through, what do you think the emotional stages are?
Well,
Probably
one,
anger is the beginning, maybe.
yeah, yeah. But probably right before the anger, I think most of us recognize when a divorce is coming,
Yeah.
right? So there may be that sorrow there. I feel like when you get, if you already know that it's coming, when you get to the table, you're actually not as upset because you've already cried. Like, you've already
Yeah.
went through the grief of it. But when that kind of settles down, if the other person isn't communicating, or if boundaries have been set and that anger comes in, especially if it's something where you cheated, now that is that's a whole whole set of that anger right there is a different type of anger, and you don't want the
Yeah.
other person to have
Right.
anything. You want to make it hard for them, so you're angry, and then you come to the point where it's like, okay, this is what's going to happen. We're just going to, let's get through this process. Let me stay sane as possible, get through this process. Maybe I'll cry, maybe I'll be angry, maybe I'll lash out. And then you get to the end. And I think that end is what you make it. So it's the end of the divorce, but like we said, it's the beginning of your next chapter. And so that is what you make it. So for some people, it feels like freedom. Like, I can breathe now, I can move on with my life. It feels like freedom. And so it's like you have a new look on life. You cut your hair or color your hair. They say that's one of the first things you do, or lose weight, however you
Right.
decide to handle that. But that feeling, or that particular part of the divorce, to me, is what you make it.
Yeah. We're kind of talking a little bit now about like mindset and healing.
Mm.
What do you think helps people most in moving forward and rebuilding their life?
Yeah. So having a plan, one, like, if you just
Yeah.
kind of get out there and it's willy nilly, you struggle to put the pieces together and to move forward. So having a plan, not just a financial plan, but just a plan as much as you can for your life. I have my clients do vision boards.
Okay.
Financial vision boards, and just kind of life vision boards. Like, how do you see yourself on the other side of this? So it gives them something to look forward to. It gives them something to plan for.
Yeah, I've done vision boards in the past, and I've kept a couple of them, but yeah, that was something that I did. That was kind of my next question. And if there's anybody that doesn't know what a vision board, let's expand on it. What would you say is a vision board?
Yeah, I can give a flash of mine right here. I can't show it all, but I keep
Okay.
mine on my desk because this one that I did is small. But it's just kind of looking at the
Yeah.
year, and what do you want to have for the year? People do it differently now. You can do a digital vision board, and what you're doing
Oh,
is you're basically thinking about what you want your future to look like, and taking that out of your mind, out of your brain, and putting it on a poster board or somewhere in your phone, or if you're doing it digitally. So it's something that you can always look at. something that you can meditate on. You can,
Mhm.
a lot of people pray about the different things that they want to have in their lives, but you don't forget. And a lot of times when you are having a bad day, or you're confused, or you're like, what's my purpose? What do I want to do? You can go back to that vision board and say, you know what? This is something that I said I want to do. Maybe I'll work on this today.
And really, to me, that's all about being proactive.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of just continually ruminating about the past and what if I should have done this, or I should have done that, or he should have done this, or he should have done that, then really this is very much about, I think this is a really good practice for healing, for starting that process of healing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And for those, for people who are spiritual or religious, or however you want to call it,
Mhm.
prayer and meditation are so necessary.
Yeah.
I think that's the way you get through those hard times. Like, you have to, like it says in the Bible, peace be still. You have to get your
Yeah.
mind still and get in a place where you can hear what your next moves should be, and have some guidance on that.
Yeah. So, what financial issues should people be especially mindful of?
Well, coming out of it, that budget. And
Yeah.
so I'm gonna raise my hand there, Bonnie, because
Yeah.
I went from 2 incomes, of course, to one, but
Yeah.
I still lived like I had two. And that's where
That's a
we
big
have a
problem.
problem. That's a big problem. If you like, you have to change your lifestyle in some cases. Now, some people may not have to, but for the most part, you're going to have to change your lifestyle. And
Yeah.
that is hard for some people to wrap their heads around, especially when you've had a lifestyle that may have been glamour and glitz. And maybe you don't want to be with us ordinary people anymore, and now you have to be. So that lifestyle change is definitely at the top of the list. I say we create a hypothetical budget. Again, like, when you get on the other side of this, what do we think our expenses are going to be? You're in the house now, so you know what the mortgage is going to be. You know what the house expenses are. So get a hypothetical budget so you know what you're
Right.
looking at.
And kind of over time, I've thought, instead of budget, I've thought about cash flow. What's
Absolutely.
coming in and what's
Yeah.
going out.
Yeah.
And like, that was one of the mistakes. One of the reasons, Reshell, that this podcast is called Ask Good Questions is because when I was starting this podcast and I was asked, well, what do you want to call it? And I'm like, Ask Good Questions, because not asking good questions and not even knowing some of the questions I should ask have been the reason for some of the biggest mistakes I've ever made.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a great, first of all, the title of the podcast is great. The name of the podcast is great.
Yeah.
It's almost like in school. You ask the basic questions like, but that's really not going to help you with your homework. That's not going to help you solve the problem. So you're right. Ask good questions. And we've always said no question is a stupid question.
Right.
We really do mean that.
Yeah.
We really do mean that.
How can somebody protect themselves financially during a divorce? What do you think?
You definitely have to pay attention. This is so important to me. You have to, I guess, kind of like sports, you have to be in the game. Don't just let people run over you. I know the attorney is just another person, right? Your attorney and their person, it's just another person. You can't be afraid of them. Try to look at it as having open dialogue, having a conversation. Do not get run over and just take what is given to you. So, when you're negotiating in a divorce, the attorney that puts out the first plan, they're not expecting you to take that first deal. They're expecting you to push back and come and counter offer, right?
Yeah.
So you don't just accept the first deal if it's not what you all discuss openly if you don't think it's going to be beneficial to you. So you have to protect yourself in that way. And the second thing is, we talked about like insurance and trust and those things. You got to go back, update your beneficiaries. You have to update your trust, change the language in there. Don't wait, change the deed on your home. Like all of those have to be done. To protect yourself financially.
Because this is especially, it comes into play with like co-parenting.
Yes.
It's just like, oh, you've got to put it aside because you still have everyday life going on. And especially when you're co-parenting, then, it can be incredibly crazy. I remember I had a good friend, one of my longtime friends, who called me every single day. And that really helped in getting through that first little while with how to deal with the enormity of what was going on.
Yes, absolutely. In 25 years, that is no short period of time. Yeah, that's length.
It was something.
It's years.
So we could go on, I think, for a while, but we're almost done.
We can go on for a while.
Yeah, we could tell I could tell stories and you could tell stories, but we'll just kind of leave it like it is. We've kind of hinted around at some of the things that have happened to us. But okay, so remember what you said. What's that one thing? We're going to wrap up now.
Yes.
What would you say would be the one thing you want to leave? I want to make sure people go and get your checklist.
Sure.
If they are going through this, but what would you say to someone who's potentially going through this?
So I did say that one thing, but I would go above that and say divorce can be tough, right? So I don't know where we are now. We're probably still in the 50%, somewhere around there with the divorce rate.
Yeah.
So I say you have to do things before you get married, right? Because there is that probability. I know everybody's in love and divorce is not a sexy topic, but I say do things before you get married.
Right.
If you need a prenup, you just need a prenup. It is a tool.
Yeah.
If you need to set up a trust so that you do not unintentionally disinherit your children from a previous marriage, then set it up. Yeah. So pre-divorce, to me, preparing for that is actually doing things before you even walk down the aisle. It's
kind of like, what do you want life to look like? And so like I've said this in other settings, but it's like you plan for the worst, but you hope for the best.
Yes. I mean, it's not sexy, but the percentages, the statistics are not always in our favor when it comes to having a long, successful marriage. So go in with some protections.
Right. So, this is, I just am hoping that we will be able to get to those people that really, really need some of this so that they get started off on the right foot. So I want to thank you again for joining me today. This has been awesome to have you with me. And we didn't really get to your book, but your book tell me the name of your book again. It's on Amazon.
Yes, it is. And thank you so much for having me. It's A Woman's Worth, 7 Key Essentials to Financial Independence. And it's really just about the basics of finance. I know, and you probably know, that for most people, we just don't understand the basics. And you have to have a foundation before you can build a house.
Right. Exactly. Well, I am hoping that we have answered and have asked some good questions that people will say, oh, gee, I better ask that. Go ask that.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. And with that, we will say thank you for joining the Ask Good Questions podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Today's episode is over, but we did ask good questions again, didn't we? Don't miss out as we broadcast live every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio at W4CY.com. Join Bonita Bell-Andersen next week for more conversations with experts on finances, retirement, behavioral finance issues, health and wellness, and more. Until then, remember to ask good questions.